All right, let's dive right in. We're setting our sights on a market that is, quite literally, a hidden giant for global trade, Argentina. We're going to unpack a massive $14.6 billion pharmaceutical and medical market that is currently undergoing some really dramatic shifts. And hey, if you think distance is a barrier, well, wait until you see the data. Just recently, we saw a staggering $12 million spike in Turkish pharma exports to Argentina, jumping from practically nothing just a couple of years ago. So how is that happening? And more importantly, how can you replicate that exact success? Let's find out.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll quickly cover the market overview, pinpoint the exact opportunities for Turkish companies, decode the local business culture, talk negotiation strategies, break down the ANMAT registration process, and finally, tackle market entry and logistics. Let's get to it.
Okay, part one, a quick overview of the Argentine medical market. Before you can even think about selling into a new market, you've got to understand the sheer scale of it. We are talking about $14.6 billion. That represents Argentina's massive retail pharmaceutical sales for the year 2024. To put that into perspective, this is a nation of over 47 million people, and they dedicate a massive 9.6% of their GDP strictly to healthcare. That's actually one of the highest investment rates in the entire region. So the demand for high-quality stuff, from daily pharmaceuticals to advanced medical devices, is just incredibly robust.
But here's where it gets really interesting for us: the market composition. Now, local national laboratories absolutely dominate the space. They produce about 73% of what's consumed. But that leaves a 27% slice for imports. And in a $14.6 billion market, that 27% is a multi-billion-dollar gap. Foreign exporters are actively stepping in here because Argentina desperately needs advanced tech, specific active pharmaceutical ingredients, and complex treatments that they just don't make locally. That 27% slice, that's your target zone. Which brings us right to part two, specific opportunities, especially looking at a fascinating case study for Turkish companies.
Guys, the data here is just explosive. Look at this. In 2025, Turkish pharmaceutical exports to Argentina skyrocketed to over $12 million. And get this, in 2023, just a couple of years prior, that number was a mere $2,000. Talk about an explosive growth trajectory, right? It totally proves that, hey, despite a 4,000-kilometer geographic gap and completely different languages, this market is incredibly receptive if you bring the right product at the right time. Okay, let's dive into this a bit deeper. When we actually break down that $12 million surge, practically the entire volume comes from just one single category, HS code 304.90. In plain English, those are dosed or packaged medicaments meant for retail sale, so excluding things like vaccines or basic bandages. What does this tell us? Well, it means finished, ready-to-use pharmaceutical treatments are literally the sharpest tip of the spear right now for breaking into the Argentine market. Moving on to part three, the business culture, because it's really all about building relationships down there. See, having the right product is really just step one. In Argentina, before you can sell a single box of medicine, you absolutely have to sell yourself. The business culture there is super distinct. It's deeply traditional and highly relational. If you fly down to Buenos Aires expecting a snappy 30-minute pitch meeting, you're going to leave empty-handed. Patience is a hard requirement here. Meetings will probably start a little late, though, fair warning, you are still expected to be impeccably on time. And expect a lot of small talk before anyone even mentions a contract. Brushing up on the local economy, or honestly, their absolute obsession with soccer, football, is going to serve you incredibly well. It boils down to this. In Argentine commerce, trust is the ultimate currency. They want to do business with people they actually know and feel comfortable with. Because of that, trying to push a deal through mid-level management is almost always a dead end. You really need to cultivate the right senior contacts, usually through a trusted third-party introduction, and put in the time to build a genuine, trusting relationship long before any paperwork is signed. And here's a quick pro tip to instantly boost your relationship building. Understand something called voseo. Basically, it's a quirk of Argentine Spanish where they use the word vos instead of tu for you. Now, sure, English is widely spoken in the corporate world, but the local language is a specific Spanish variant called Castellano. Making even a tiny effort to use local phrases or just having your business cards translated into Spanish shows a massive amount of respect. Seriously, it'll open doors for you. All right, part 4. Let's talk negotiation and communication strategies. Once you've actually established that trust, we move into the tactical phase, the handshake, the back and forth, and ultimately closing the deal.
Let's rapid fire some vital etiquette rules here. First up, dress formally. Dark suits are the standard. It's definitely a more formal vibe than you might be used to in North America. Second, personal space is a bit different. Argentines stand pretty close when talking, and a pat on the back is a huge sign of acceptance, so just welcome it. Third, you've got to read between the lines. Communication is super subtle, favoring context over direct content. They really value eloquence and diplomacy, which means they might hesitate to give you a flat-out no. Finally, negotiations are like a slow game of chess. They're highly analytical, concessions happen gradually, and remember, absolutely nothing is final until the ink is physically dry on the contract.
Next up, Part 5, ANMAT and the registration process. Time to clear those hurdles. Okay, so you've shaken hands and agreed on terms. Great. Now we hit the bureaucratic phase. We need to demystify the regulatory maze every medical exporter has to navigate to actually get their product across the border. There is one acronym you're going to hear constantly, ANMAT. This is the Argentine Bureau of Medicines, Foods, and Medical Technology. Think of them as the equivalent to the US FDA. They are the absolute gatekeeper, no exceptions. Your product has to be registered with them. But here is some fantastic news. The regulatory landscape recently shifted, creating a massive advantage for exporters. Enter Disposition 4446/25. This is a brand new deregulation law from 2025 that completely streamlines the import of low-risk medical products, specifically Class 1 and 2 devices. Industry insiders say this impacts roughly 70% of all medical products imported into Argentina. It leans heavily on sworn declarations and drastically speeds up market entry. It is a huge win for exporters. So the crucial point is nailing down the exact steps for registration. First, you need to determine your good manufacturing practices or GMP status. Second, compile a rock-solid dossier, in Spanish of course, that includes free sale certificates from recognized countries. Third, and please pay close attention to this one, you must appoint an authorized local representative. Foreign companies literally cannot hold the registration themselves. A local ANMAT authorized company has to hold it for you. Finally, they submit everything through the online portal and you wait for approval, which can take a few months. So yeah, choose that local representative very carefully. Finally, Part 6, Market Entry and Logistics. Getting your product where it needs to go. We are now on the final leg of the journey, actually moving your registered product into the country. Now, Argentina is massive. It stretches 4,000 kilometers from north to south, which makes logistics incredibly complex. But the absolute critical thing you need to know about is the National Traceability System, or SNTM. This is a strict, mandatory system that tracks every single unit of a drug from the second it leaves the lab or port, all the way through the distributors and pharmacies, straight to the patient. Your packaging and tracking systems have to be 100% compliant with the SNTM to ensure security and prevent counterfeiting. So we've sized up the market, we understand the culture, and we've mapped out the regulations. The real question now is, how do you get started? Well, are you ready for Expo Medical Argentina 2026? It's happening from September 23rd to the 25th in Buenos Aires, and it is the premier trade event for the healthcare sector down there. Remember what we talked about regarding personal relationships? This is exactly where you need to be to shake hands, look potential partners in the eye, and forge those vital, trust-based connections. Look, the Argentine medical market is huge. It's hungry for imports, and it's currently going through this amazing phase of regulatory streamlining. Yes, the business culture demands a bit of patience, and sure, the geography is vast, but as that export data clearly showed us, the companies that take the time to respect the process, find the perfect local representative, and build genuine trust, they are reaping massive rewards. The roadmap is laid out right in front of you, so how will you transform that geographic distance into your next strategic, lucrative advantage? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.